All right, so today in front of me from Barrell Craft Spirits, we have their Barrell Vantage. So Vantage is a blend of straight bourbons finished in 3 distinct expressions of virgin oak. Mizunara originating from Japan, French oak originating from France, and toasted American oak originating from the US. So each component whiskey is finished separately, then blended together, creating the final product. The distillate in here is from Kentucky, Indiana, and Tennessee. Comes in at 114.44 proof. Definitely excited to get into this, guys. So without further ado, let's go. So as I stated, the distillate comes from Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee. It comes in at 114.44 proof. Let's go ahead and get into the nose. So the nose is it's very interesting. It always reminds me of like the Seagrass and then the Armida combined. There's definitely some tropical vibe to it, but then there's also I do pick up some oak on the nose. Not sure which one that comes from. It's not necessarily toasted, but I do pick up a lot of allspice and candied orange a little bit further into the glass. So a little bit further into the glass with that allspice, I do pick up like a little bit of toasted coconut, some candied orange, some allspice further into the glass. Further away from the glass, I start to pick up some some rye spice, and then there's like this other little flash of oak that appears there further away from the glass. So further away too, I start to pick up a little bit more fruit, like some stewed pear starts to appear there. So further in is like this toasted coconut, candied orange, allspice, and then further away, pick up this kind of unique oakiness, a little bit of stewed pear there further away as well. Really nice nose, guys. Get in the palate. Cheers. So there's a lot going on with this one on that first sip. It kind of pulls you in a couple different directions here. It's like there's some oakiness, there's some rye spice, there's a little bit of fruitiness going on, and then on the back of the palate, you start to get like this almost like a burnt like coffee bean kind of flowing through the end there. There's definitely some apricot there on the center of the palate. So one of the things that I first notice is some of the oak presence that's on here. Definitely present there on the first sip, more on the front and middle of the palate. It's, again, that French oak delivers such a very unique spiciness to it. I do get some of that spiciness, but I think it's more from the rye, not necessarily the oak presence on there. But definitely a lot of oak presence there on the front, middle of the palate. Some apricot there on the middle of the palate, and then into the back, it's like this chocolatey, kind of like a burnt coffee bean finish. A little bit of black pepper there that kind of flows through with it. Pretty nice first sip. Let's get the second one. So on that second sip, a little bit changed for me. So that oakiness is still kind of there on the front of the palate, but I do start to pick up a little bit of toasted almond on the front. Again, there's definitely some of that allspice kind of lingering in there, some spiciness, probably from the wood. And then, middle of the palate, there's rye spices, there's apricot. And into the back, some of that oak influence does kind of flow through into the back. And there's just like this milk chocolate and almost like a burnt coffee with a little bit of black pepper that kind of flow through into the finish. I think this is one that does continue to evolve on the palate. Flavors will start to pop up here and there, and they'll kind of go away. And the next sip, something else kind of appears and goes away. So this is one that is, will require a little bit of airtime, allow time for it to develop. It's a very nice, easy sipping whiskey at 114 proof. I would say it drinks its proof, not hotter for sure. But a lot of unique different flavors on this one. That, like I said, that oak presence is really it's really unique, and it's intriguing because I feel a lot of these spices that are kind of playing around with the palate and the flavors that kind of appear here and there. I think a lot of it contributes to to the different types of oak used in this blend. Again, there's some delicate oak, and then you have the French oak, which delivers that spice, and then the toasted American oak, probably coming that toasted almond note that I get. It's really nice. It's definitely a complex whiskey, in a good way. It just takes some time to kind of get those flavors adjusted or acclimated to your palate a little bit. Really nice, though. Let's get a last sip, guys. Cheers. Yeah, so some of the spices from the oak have died down a little bit, and it brings to light a little more that toasted almond, some of that apricot, and then, you know, some of the rye spices kind of still there mingling on the center of the palate. But towards the back of the palate is really where it gets interesting. So there is like this prune note that starts to develop there on the back of the palate, with that milk chocolate, that burnt coffee, some black pepper into the finish. And there is a little bit of oak influence that does flow through, you know, from the front of the palate where it was dominant and to the back. But it makes for an amazing experience. You know, this is something that just continuously kind of evolves there on the palate. And then it's weird because on the back, like through the finish, after the chocolate and the coffee kind of go away, there's almost this dusty bourbon note that kind of appears there for me on the back of the palate. And it's not necessarily like a woody finish or anything like that. It just reminds me of what some flavors of a dusty bourbon would give you there. Just right through the finish. A little bit of, you know, a hint of pepper there. And this is after the chocolate and that burnt coffee bean kind of goes away. But yeah, I mean, definitely a complex whiskey from Barrell here. Again, I mean, you know, the levels of complex whiskeys they put out, like the Seagrass and the Armida, and now this one, you know, three different finishes of oak inside here. It's going to give you a very unique experience and a very unique whiskey for sure. Outstanding job though here by Barrell Craft Spirits. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to send a big thank you over to the team at Barrell Craft Spirits for supplying with this bottle to review on the channel. So guys, as far as like a whiskey score, I would give this a 7.7. I definitely think it's worth the buy. For those out there who are experienced barrel drinkers, I think this one fits perfectly in for you. Again, you know, on the nose, it almost reminded me of a mix between the Seagrass and the Armida. You could tell right away that there was definitely some complexity to this one just on the nose. And then you go into the palate, and again, this is something that is just it's ever evolving. It just continues to evolve on the palate. Some flavors start to die away there, you know, at that second and third sip, but then more start to appear later on. Oakiness definitely plays around with the palate and the flavors that appear and kind of disappear. But definitely one to add into your collection, especially for the people who are really big into Barrell Craft Spirits. This is one that will easily slide into your collection. For new whiskey drinkers, you know, this may be a little bit more on the complex side of things. But not to say that they still wouldn't enjoy this, because it is a very flavorful whiskey. But from, you know, the complexity side of things, it almost may be too much for a new person getting into whiskey. But regardless of the fact of that, it is a complex whiskey. I think it's going to open up even more as time goes on. So I'm really looking forward to revisiting this here in another week or so with a little bit of airtime and see what happens. But again, you know, official whiskey score is a 7.7. It is definitely worth the buy, in my opinion. Again, big shout out to Barrell Craft Spirits for supplying with this bottle to review on the channel. So guys, if you're looking for more reviews like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay dusty.